You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
I'm Stephen Cabral, and I'm excited to get started with today's Weight Loss Wednesday show. Here's why. One question that comes up quite often is, shouldn't I just eat when I'm hungry? Meaning, like, there's a lot of so-called experts out there and people out there and say, don't worry about diets, don't worry about whatever, just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, right? And that seems like perfectly normal, sound advice. But here's the problem. It does not work in the real world. It doesn't work in a clinical setting, and unless you really have a controlled environment, it's not going to work for you either. So if you've ever had to deal with like metabolic issues, meaning like your body can gain weight if you're not watching really what you're eating, or if you're not exercising, it's not going to work for you. Now, would it work for like an ectomorph or a thinner body type? Yes, because they're not prone to gaining weight in the first place. But here's the issue. It also doesn't work for them either because they also don't have that turn on hunger appetite as much, and I'm going to explain why. So this show is not just for people trying to lose weight, it's for every body type. And I want to debunk that myth because it is a myth. It's more of like a fad of should you just eat when you're hungry. I want to preface that by saying you don't want to overeat, right? You don't want to force feed yourself. So I do want to start, or I'm going to end the show with what is a healthy eating regimen for most people, right? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about different scenarios. We'll talk about a little bit of intermittent fasting as well. But I will keep this show to around the 10 to 12 minute mark. So let's get started. Okay, so I like to call this talking really about the topic of physiology and psychology of hunger. But I'm not going to turn this into a big biochemistry or, lesson really that goes in depth on how the body works. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about hormones. So here's the thing. The ectomorph or the Vata body type, and it can move into the Pitta as well, or the mesomorph, is that like when your stress levels are high, I'm going to give you all the reasons why you don't want to just wait until you're hungry sometimes to eat. So when your cortisol levels are high, your stress levels are high, it shuts off, for the most part, that hunger sensation. And that's because you're moving over to the fight or flight. You're moving over to what's called the sympathetic nervous system. And of course, I've talked about this before. But why is this important? Well, when you're in that fight or flight, you're going to be more prone to go through whatever sugar that you have in your bloodstream, but then move right over to that fast source as well, which again is glucose. So you're going to break down liver glycogen, but you can also start to catabolize muscle tissue. And that's not a good thing, right? So you start to lose muscle mass instead of actually fat mass. So one thing that you don't want to get rid of, which are those nice toned muscles, right? So really, really important we look at that. Now, should you eat when stressed? No, but we have to start to calm down those stress levels, breathe, and just not skip meals. That's important as well, all right? Really, really important. Another reason why you don't want to just eat when you're hungry is because, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth, when you're anxious, how many times do you say you want to eat something, right? To kind of calm down your body. So what you say is, oh, no, I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. Well, a lot of times is you're over anxious and you're looking to food to kind of combat that anxiety. That's very, very important to look at. So if you're fasting for long periods of time because you've read, you should only eat one meal a day and you should make it your last meal of the day or whatever it is, think about that. If your body's in a fasted state, it doesn't necessarily know that you're just kind of doing this whole intermittent fasting thing and eating once a day. And for people who are prone to hypothyroid, low thyroid, it can absolutely lower your thyroid. And it's shown in lab tests by an increase in TSH. So that's not a great thing either, meaning like there are different diets for different people, absolutely. But for someone who's more prone to low thyroid, it has been shown many, many times that long periods of intermittent fasting, meaning like I always recommend 12 hours overnight, 7 to 7 for 99% of the population, not everyone. But going longer than that, meaning like going until dinner to dinner, is not going to be great if you have lower thyroid and potentially even lowered progesterone levels because of the stress that could place in your body, which will then shift more to that cortisol. So I think that's really important to look at as well. Again, that this is not an all for one. So really important, meaning like, yes, you won't be as hungry when you're doing your usual fasts, but that also means that you're slowing your metabolism potentially for a lot of other people. Okay, then there's also groups of people that I see in my clinic, in my office every day who have lower levels of serotonin, lower levels of dopamine, and a lot of times their body's trying to compensate for that lower amount of serotonin by eating more carbohydrates, especially after dinner. They kind of want to calm the body down. They want to get a little bit more sleepy, and so they're eating more processed foods, they're eating more carbohydrates, and that's going to help with those comfort foods are actually going to help calm their body down. Now they can do it far more naturally, of course, right? But again, this is one more reason that we can't just eat if we're hungry, because those people say, well, I'm hungry. I'm used to having these snacks after dinner. That's more of a psychological perspective than it is a physiological perspective. So there's a huge difference. When we're anxious, when we need food to kind of comfort us, that's psychological. That is not a true physiological response telling you you're hungry, right? So they're totally different. Your body doesn't need the food. Your brain is looking for that food instead. So really, it's hard, because we don't really know what it means to even be hungry anymore. And I think that's an important thing to look at. Like, unless anyone's done a longer term water fast, which is not something that I'm recommending, but unless you do like a true fast, we even know what real hunger pangs are. A lot of times it is just our brain telling us, you know what? We're anxious. We need to eat. Or our metabolism is so low, we don't even feel hungry a lot of the time. So people can eat 700, 800 calories a day and just not even be that hungry. That is not enough calories to actually get you the nutrition you need unless you're doing like a lot of all-in-one shakes. But I'm not recommending that. I'm recommending that you do the majority of your eating through whole food nutrition. So it's really important to start to understand that your physiology, meaning your body can give you true sense of hunger, versus your psychology, which can give you sometimes false sense of hunger. And you need to start to differentiate the difference. But what's even easier is just to say this, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to have 3 main meals per day. I'm going to have a breakfast. And again, you're going to do your 12-hour overnight fast, stop eating at 7 o'clock or so, whatever time you want, and then wait 12 hours to the next day. So not until 7 or 8 o'clock that next morning would you then have your all-in-one smoothie, which is, of course, what I recommend, or whatever else breakfast that you choose to have is. Then you're going to wait 3 to 4 hours. After that, you're going to let that smoothie digest. Drink the smoothie over a course of 30 to 60 minutes minimally so that you're just time releasing it into your system. You're not just drinking that big smoothie all at once. Then you're going to have lunch. You're actually going to get a little hungry before lunch. Now, that's exactly how it should be. Start to feel that hunger. Your body's ready to eat. It's ready to accept food in your stomach. And then after lunch, if your dinner isn't more than, let's say 6 hours away, you can wait from lunch until dinner. Now, if you're someone that's active and you're worried about losing weight, you don't want to lose too much weight, you can absolutely do an easy to digest mid-afternoon snack in there. That works for most people. On our Fatlocity plan, we do 3 main meals and 2 snacks. In between those meals, we absolutely do that. We're doing smaller meals. We're trying to shrink people's stomachs. But for the most part, most people can do breakfast, lunch, mid-afternoon snack, and then dinner. And a lot of people with digestive-based issues shouldn't do the mid-afternoon snack or any snack, because what happens is this: they need to allow all of the food to move through their stomach into their intestines before putting new food in there. That's where most people go wrong, is they're eating too often, and that food is just fermented in their stomach, causing bloating, causing gas, causing fermentation, which leads to those things like heartburn and indigestion, all of those things. So really what we're talking about is, let's just act like normal humans for the most part. There are a lot of people who want to fast until lunch and they just do lunch, maybe mid-afternoon snack and dinner, lunch and then dinner. I'm okay with that as well, but most people do enjoy a breakfast. I enjoy breakfast myself. Most people don't have too relaxed of a morning meal, like they're in traffic, stress is already starting. Like if you just meditated during the morning and you did yoga, well, some hot water and lemon or some greens powder or something like that would be totally fine. But most people, their bodies are already getting into that fight or flight. You really should give it some nutrition. You really should, from a health perspective. So again, you have to look at your lifestyle. I see, again, we do thousands and thousands of appointments a year, and we've been doing this forever. I can tell you that what most people benefit from is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Easy to digest breakfast, no chicken sausages and a pound of bacon and let's be realistic of what real paleo is. Real paleo was not waking up and eating meat first thing in the morning. That's not real paleo. That was not realistic. That never would have happened, okay? You need to catch it first. You need to get it. You need to then split it with the entire, your tribe. So you're also not sitting down to a pound of it. Or if you were, then you might go a week without eating it again. So again, I'm not going to get into real paleo today, but what I say is easy to digest breakfast. And then you're going to have your main meal at lunch, ideally, but if not, I know most people do that, and a dinner. That will work for you. That will stave off the hunger pains. And again, I do agree that you should feel a little hungry before that next meal. If you're already feeling bloated and full, you actually may want to think about, well, what did I just eat at that meal before? Not necessarily, yes, you could skip the next meal, but really start to think about it like, why hasn't the food moved out of my stomach? Why am I feeling bloated? It most likely has to do with a food sensitivity, poor food combining, or just eating incompatible foods with what your body's ready for right now, like too heavy on the animal protein if you have weak hydrochloric acid, weak enzymes in the stomach, right? So again, that's a whole topic for another day, but I just wanted to debunk the myth that you should only eat when you're hungry. It's not going to work for everyone, and it's misinforming people from a real clinical science-based perspective, right? It works for some people, great, but let's just not share that with the whole world. Let's talk about what a good diet is for most people, and then, let people then experiment from there. So my goal with the Cabral concept is always just to give you the information, allow you to start moving forward, really, really important, recalibrate as needed as you begin to tweak and make things perfect for you. So hopefully this helps. Feel free to pass it on to anyone that you believe it could help. And thank you once again for tuning into the Cabral concept.
Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp hearts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stephencabral.com/resources.